Hey, welcome to the sort of okay show about horses with Buck and Kyle. Buck is presently in Montana, and I'm at my home base in Florida. I'm not sure. It sounds like maybe it's hotter out there than it is down here at the moment. Is that right?
That would be an incorrect statement. It is beautiful out here, and it's probably mid-80s, sort of mid-50s when you wake up. There's no humidity. They haven't had a lot of rain, and so the watering systems are out on the course. But no, it's beautiful out here. Hardly a cloud in the sky, and but you do get sunburns quickly.
Well, that's good. That speaks well then, because I'd heard that it was really, really hot out there, and that'll be great. And if they don't get rain, they do a great job irrigating that property, so it's not like you're going to be lacking for good footing.
No, it should be perfect, and usually you can walk the course here with your bare feet, and so maybe I'll try that tomorrow.
Great. It'd be like a bloody hobbit out there. I'm sure you'll scare all the children. All right. So today we're going to review a couple of the teams that have been announced. We'll continue doing that through to the Olympics. I think we'll start with Team Germany. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good. I think maybe the event begins and ends with them anyway, so might as well lead off with them.
All right. Well, it does seem as though they're coming with a little bit of strength. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a really super strong team, but you might be able to get away with a couple good performances there. I guess the obvious first one would be Michael Young, but he's bringing he's choosing to bring a different horse, and it seems obviously it was quite successful, and you'd assume that he would know what he was sitting on, so you would expect him to be running for another medal there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's that horse was an 8-year-old last year when it won the Europeans at Blair, and he rode it last week and won Aachen, and it did a much, it scored better than Sam did in the dressage, so it's pretty scary that he can win the Grand Slam and then pull out a different horse that wasn't even part of that Grand Slam equation, and that's the one he wants to go. It's been obviously very successful. It's quite young. But it looks like it's very nice to ride. It's obviously fancy, and obviously he rides amazing. So that one looks good. I mean, Germany, they have the world number one. They have the current world champion. They have the current FEI Classic Series champion, and a rider that was second in Badminton this year. Yeah. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, so we've got Ingrid Klimke, who was the Classics champion, and then we've got Andreas Alstott on Warendorf, and please forgive any of the pronouncing that I do because I'm not very good with my German, English, Brazil, Portuguese, anything. But obviously Andreas was second at Badminton, had an incredible performance there, and was just beaten by Michael. So they're obviously, and then there was who's the last one? Sandra. And where is she? I mean, she's won a bunch of stuff, obviously, but where is she? What was her last big performance? Do you have the stats there?
Well, she won the World Championships in France, and I think it seems like everything's just been prepared. The horse has just been saved and prepared for this coming Olympics, and its record is about spotless, and it's a little bit older now, but it has been very, very successful everywhere it goes. So I wouldn't expect that to change. And one thing about all these horses, they're all good show jumpers. With Andreas was magic at Badminton. I think he had one, if I recall, and I know that was a great result for that horse because I don't think it didn't appear to be the easiest horse to show jump. And so if you're trying to find one weak link, you might just say Andreas' horse in the show jumping would be, if you want to call that a weak link, we'll go with that. But, it's pretty scary when that's a weak link because went clear in the time, did a really good dressage, and won down at Badminton. If that's your weak link, that's a good team.
Yeah. And then we've talked before about, about the program in Germany. And, obviously, I was thinking about it today. They've always had good horses. They've always had, very good riders, very good horses. And they've had performances that, were maybe lacking for the quality that they were bringing. But in the last, period of time, I think Christopher Bartle has put together an incredibly successful program based upon these riders. Obviously, he's put on it's a very successful program, but they really operate as a team, and I think it's all a huge credit to him, the successes that they are continually showing up with now. Not because the riders themselves aren't a huge part of it, but because he's able to draw them together and really get those performances on the day when they need a team competition as well now. And that for the Germans was lacking for a very long time. So, you can't speak so highly of the quality of his thought process and the design that he had when he went in there to be their coach.
Yeah, and he's a person in the equestrian world that's done everything. He's ridden at the top in dressage. He's obviously won badminton and eventing. He was a very good national hunt jockey in jump racing. So he knows a thing or two about horses in general. And, he's obviously a very smart guy, but he's also, in my experience with him, a very humble guy. And, puts all his success on the riders and takes all the blame, which is, for me, that's what a coach is all about. When it goes great, he stands back, and when it doesn't go great, he steps up. And that, the riders on the team, or if you're just talking about a regular team of players, they see that and they respect that. And I think that's a big thing, because they know that he's got their back, and he's not a person that's out for individual glory. He really goes for the team atmosphere, and he believes in it, and it's amazing what he's done.
Yeah, and he seems to be very good and very adept at actually guiding the younger riders at competitions, and then also being able to step back and allow the riders to bring their own design and flavor and training to it, and competition to it. With the riders that he knows he can have that confidence in, and I think that takes a lot of confidence as a coach, and he's able to do that. I think it just. Germany is obviously successful in all disciplines in equestrian, but he's just done a fantastic job putting the final bits together to make this a juggernaut that's going to be very hard to fault for probably the next 5 years, anyways, unless we can go in there and fire him and start all over and get rid of some of these guys. But I don't think that's going to happen.
But I think the other thing, obviously, he's done a great job in coaching, but. The Germans were known for their dressage and for the show jumping, but they didn't have sort of blood enough horses. And, Upland Lubo is a South Francais. Horse for Hail Bob, I believe, is an Irish, has some Irish in him. Michael's horse has got plenty of thoroughbred. Andrea's horse has got plenty of thoroughbred. And so, they're sitting on the right horses. It doesn't really matter how good you are if you don't have the horsepower underneath you. You're not going to be as successful as they've been, and they've definitely changed. I'm sure there's German breeding in there as far as for the dressage and the show jumping, but there's a lot more thoroughbred blood in their horses as well.
Well, yeah, and I think the reality with that is the Germans they think so far ahead. They're not in it for that, you get a lot of breeding and owners that are on that 4-year, 5-year track. And that's great, except you're constantly having to replenish. And with them, they think down the road several generations much, and it ends up developing such a incredible foundation to work from. And I think that's especially in breeding, being that methodical is going to it's going to continue to pay off in the future. Because for a long time the German horses were slightly heavier and avoided a little bit because they didn't have maybe the tendency to carry on with the gallop and have the speed. but they've included so much blood to their program, but they've injected it not in the first generation. They've injected it over multiple generations, and you always get a better success with that.
For sure.
I say. So, good with the Germans. They look like they might have a chance at actually, having a flag up there on the pole at the end of the weekend, maybe standing on a podium. I'm going to guess they're going to be very difficult to beat. And Brazil's coming on strong, and they're sending what looks to me to be quite a good team.
Yeah, I mean, it's you definitely get the feeling that they're coming together sort of at the right time, headed obviously by Mark Todd. And, I think everything he touches seems to turn to gold anyway. So this may work out for them. And, but I think they have been in years past an afterthought. But I think that they could surprise some people this weekend or in a few weeks' time. And just from a personal standpoint and a personal note is Nelson Moreira de Silva getting to be the traveling reserve. What a great guy. He's the epitome of what the sport is. He absolutely loves the horse that, a bunch of other people rode and maybe didn't love. He thinks it walks on water. He rides it fantastic. And it wasn't that many years ago that he came to me at Poplar Place and looking for a job as a groom. And I didn't have didn't need anybody, but Laura Vandervliet was riding with me, and I said to him, I think Laura might need somebody. And they built up this fantastic partnership, fantastic business. But to work his way from, from where he came from to where he is awesome. And I was fortunate enough he's been a friend for that whole time, and I've worked with him, and to see where he came from to where he is awesome. And he should be really proud of his achievement.
Yeah. And I think the Brazilians have been, their show jumping team has been really strong for a very long time, and it all came together from Nelson Pessoa, and it descended from that, not just in his son, but because of that one, great rider. They focused on the show jumping very strongly, and the eventing has always been a bit of an afterthought. But they've got a bunch of very good riders that know what they're doing, and they've had really good performances. And I have to apologize again for the name announcing, but the Tom Bombilio 2, Bombidio. Anyways, I know where the name comes from The Hobbit, but that horse has been performing very well. Last year it was bronze medalist at the Pan Ams. It's capable of the mid to low 40s on the flat. He's an incredibly good rider, and they'll go for it. The thing with the Brazilians on that weekend, they're just going to go for it because the whole country is, so excited about this. Their passion is just going to really, I think, buoy these people up, and I wouldn't be shocked to see, a top 5 placing out of them.
Yeah, I mean they've Hoy has done very well with that horse. He's always done well in the dressage. He's fairly reliable on the cross country, would sometimes have a few time faults. But the one place he has been a little bit unreliable is in the show jumping. He's quite a careful horse, but he has a tendency to every once in a while throw in a nasty stop and fire poor Hoy out the front door. And, obviously they've been working on that, and I think he's got that under control. But, just something to think about when the pressure's really on, and, nobody wants to fall off at the Olympic Games in the show jumping, especially when they have a chance. And then, does the horse jump as careful as normal? Just something to watch, and just a fun little tidbit. But Hoy's a great rider, and that horse won very, very well late. So I'm sure he's got that problem under control.
Well, and it did that at Rolex a couple of years ago, didn't it? Was it 2 years ago?
It did, and it also did it at the Fork. Maybe it just doesn't like America. So maybe. So, I don't think the Brazilians are particularly fond of the Canadians at the moment, from a comment I read on Facebook by him, actually.
The other riders, Marcio Appeal. That horse, and these horses are a little bit. They're not young horses. That one's 13 or 14. They're very capable on the flat. I think that one's been in the high 40s on the flat, and I wish I had the stats in front of me. But there's some good performances in there, and if they bring it all together on the day with sort of Mark Todd giving them the experience guidance that he can bring to it, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, and Carlos Paro, he was well up there at Barbary a couple of weeks ago with a very, very, very low dressage score in the 30s. And my memory's not great, but I think he had a 32. He did have 2 down in the show jumping, and then went very well cross country. So I believe he's finished. He might have finished second. He's definitely in the top 3. But Barbary's a big event in England, and everybody shows up for it. He was in the big Event Riders Master Series, and he more than held his own. And so I think that could be an exciting combination for Brazil here in Rio.
Right, and then Marcio George on the Westphalian mare, which I've seen go, and it is a really nice horse. I think it's a little bit heavier. I've only seen it from a distance. I think it's a little bit heavier, but again, it has had some good performances and some good form. It always looks like it just maybe needs 3 good phases all on the same weekend, which obviously we all need. But I think it's capable in all 3. So it's good to have that. If you can pull that together on the right weekend, you can sometimes be a huge support and a little bit of a surprise. But it's good for a team to. Those guys really do rally together. They're all pretty close, and they know how to kind of get along and make things work. So it should be fun for them to be in their own country on the Olympic team, and I think it's going to be a pretty passionate experience. So
yeah. Zealand and major, the Super Bowl or the World Series or the NBA Finals or whatever. Everybody talks about it just being another game. And I think in some ways, Mark being the coach and riding, that is just another game and just another event. And it's still 3-star cross country. It's still a championship. Treat every other event. You're going to end up doing better. And I think that, Mark is like so many of the riders, rides and teaches at the events. And so I think it'll just be another day at the office for him. And, he's so detail oriented. He's been so successful. I'm sure he's got every scenario played out and covered. So I wouldn't look.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a good point with the coach and the rider being at the same show, and I know that I think we disagree a little bit on that, because my feeling is that it's very difficult to. Sometimes as a coach, you're watching in a warm up, and things change from what you'd originally planned, and you have to be able to morph and change with it. I'm assuming Mark Todd, being as organized as he is, will have great people on the ground. I know multiple events that I've been to as a coach where I was only coaching. I have seen something where, like at badminton with Libby, I changed the warm-up to something completely different than what we normally do. And while I was doing it, it frightened me a little bit. But what I was seeing going on before that gave me no confidence. And so to me, laying it out on paper and preparing for it is difficult as to say that's definitely how it's going to be. And I think as a coach, it is a little bit of a detriment not to have him on the ground to help them through at the time. And so I do think we disagree a little bit on that, because I think the presence of being able to adjust and morph with the situation, I find it anyways as a coach much more flow if I'm just there and that's all I've got to do. But you're better than me, so what can I say?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that. Yeah, when you go to a major championship or you go to Olympic Games, the teaching and the X's and O's are kind of done. When you get to the show, it's little things here and there, and I think sometimes if I'm going to go and just coach, I'm almost get in the way, and just be. You want everything to be so perfect, and this is not a perfect. I think that just as much as in my experience, the more you can keep everything the same, the better it's going to be. But we're going to agree to disagree on this one, and so you're wrong.
But I think the thing is that's the reality is there's it, and I say it to people who come to ride with me. I'll be like, okay, so you're going to come and ride with me because of. I mean, you hope you don't come to ride with me because of my riding. You come to ride with me because of the coaching, because that's what I'm supposed to bring to your riding, is to improve you, not because I can ride or do it, which obviously I can't. But I think that, and then the other thing I say to them is that you might come into my program and you might find yourself completely at odds with the way that I teach, the way that I manage, or the way that I handle myself. And because of that, then you have to find the right program for yourself. But you come at it from a different direction than I do in the thought process. But that's finding the right situation for the riders, I think, is so important. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's about staying out of the way, but I do think sometimes you have to be able to get in there and say, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? That said, these are real professionals you're dealing with, and I don't think that that's so much of a concern that you're going to be like all of a sudden having to change the system for them because things have gone wrong, But anyways, it's always, there's many different ways to do it and to get a result. So you're obviously, again, you're wrong, but you refuse to change your thought process. I've noticed that.
Well, the one thing about me is there's not much thought that goes into anything. So I don't have much of a brain to think with. So that keeps things simple for me. But you are deep in thought. You are, you're very, very studious and very academic and educated, and I'm just kind of off the streets.
Yeah, no, like my several doctorates that I have. I mean, I worked very hard to get them, and I think it'd be a disservice not to actually apply them. Those universities were very very helpful for me to be able to form the thought processes I've developed. All right. So on that note, incredible. We'll cover one of the other teams that we've got. We've got two more teams to cover tonight. Canada, Team Canada. An interesting sort of couple of weeks for them. They didn't announce their team, but the team was chosen. What's that? Are you going to let me just run with it? So the team was chosen, and there wasn't. What's that?
I just think that the whole thing is a joke, and there's so many things that are so wrong with this that But anyway, I'll let you tell everybody about your thoughts on the Canadian team, and then I'll disagree with you anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the thing is I don't think we're going to, I think that we're probably in agreement, and what I'll do is I'll run through the sort of fact checking of it, because what happened was the team was chosen, and then Jessica Phoenix put in an appeal to question that she was left off as an alternate. I think everybody was surprised that she was left off, because she's been a very, an instrumental part of the Canadian team for a while, and also have been a very go-to person in the last couple of games. And her appeal was successful, and it wasn't based upon results. It was based upon, and the results, I think there was a bit of a toss-up between a couple of horses and riders, and it was based upon lack of professionalism, integrity, a few things like that. The documents haven't come out yet, but I think they're coming out in the next little bit. They should be a pretty interesting read. But she won her appeal based upon the integrity of the program and some statements that were made to her that were overheard, and then about being left off the team because she wasn't following direction and this sort of thing. And it's a pretty poor situation because you ended up with poor Catherine Robinson, who was named to the World Championship team, and then due to a paper dispute, left off the team for that year. And now, once again, she got bumped from the team off of very good performances this year. Her time faults are a little troubling, but her dressage is unbelievable. Her show jumping is so consistent, and she's been very clear on cross country. So she was on the team, and she's the one that they bumped for Jess. And when you do the math and you look at it, actually, it's only about a 5-point difference where Jesse's actually behind Catherine. But I think Catherine brought a lot more options to the table as far as a potential superstar performance. And then to have drug her down one more time, this is the stuff that makes riders question why the hell they are even wanting to be involved in this stuff. And I think Canada is such a small little pool that we have this sort of nonsense going on is just, I mean, we had just sort of started to get our feet underneath us as a team. And I just think it's such a poor showing that we're back to this situation, and it's really shameful. And I think after the Olympics there'll be a lot of reviewing going on. After the Pan Ams last year, there was a lot of reviewing going on, and then nothing went forward except that they made Clayton one of the selectors. Which again, you've got a selector who is also the coach. So when the selector leaves the rider off the team and then she appeals and gets put on it, how can you have any team integrity and faith when you get to the games? I just think that it's a mess, and it's going to be a mess going forward. But we'll go through the rest of the team. We've got Jessica Phoenix then replacing Catherine Robinson. Jessica got chosen to go on a little romance, which I think is best described by someone else as your first advanced horse out of Pony Club. It's a nice little horse, good jumper, not quite enough stride, in my opinion, for the bigger stuff. The 3-star level, it should be good enough for the jumping, but it's not the most careful in the show jumping. And then its dressage has been typically sort of 55 plus. And I think that it doesn't do a team a lot of credit because you're giving Jessica not enough horsepower to actually work with. If you want the rider, I think that's fine, but she's not going to be able to get that horse, I don't think, below a 54. I could be wrong, and I hope I am for her sake, and I'd be happy to eat my words, but it just doesn't have enough step, and I think she's going to struggle to make that improvement in that performance at the Olympics. Then you've got Celine O'Hanlon, who's been having, she's certainly deserves the spot. She adjusted and put herself into the place very well with her preparations last year. This year, her dressage has fallen off a little bit. I think the stress is going to get to that horse, and the Brazilians are going after Canada, and I don't mean they're going after them as a rider. They're going after them as a country because of one of the things that was done at the Pan Ams last year by one of the Canadian officials, and the reference I was making to a Facebook post was they said the Canadians are in for a real riot down there because they're going to be playing live samba music while the horses are going to go in the ring, and they're going to get payback for what happened last year at the Pan Ams. And I think it's really sad because it's not really the way Canadians operate. And it certainly wasn't a rider orchestrated thing. It was a really poor decision by one official. And I think that what's going to happen is when the Brazilians discover that Selena's horse gets stressed with all that noise and excitement, I think they're gonna make it pay. I feel a little bit bad for her. I hope she is able to keep a cap on it. She's a professional rider. She's a very good rider. I think she's one of our best athletes, and was on a real rise last year. And she's really gonna have to find her bearings into a tough situation, but she's had enough experience to do that. So, I'm really pulling for her because I think she's been looking for a big breakout for a while now. Rebecca Howard on Rupert has been, a couple of years ago, she was Equestrian of the Year in Canada. She is a very good rider. I mean, just an incredibly professional rider. That's a very good horse. He's been on our world championship teams. He went to the Olympics in London. She did fall off there. We had a very sort of poor showing there. But she's had a good couple of years prior to this year. She's had a couple of bobbles last year and this year, and she's trying to find her bearings a little bit. I think that horse, I would put my money on it. Our pool is not real deep, and I think you have to give it a shot because it's done some big 4-stars and done well at them. It just is looking like it needs to find its form a bit for the Olympics. But again, I'd put my faith that she's going to do that. And then Colleen Loach, who is on a young horse, a 10-year-old, who I've been told is being sold after the Olympics, which is a little unfortunate because Canada, you're investing in a young horse, and you'd like to invest into it and then have it for the Worlds and the next Olympics because that's when you get your payback. But that said, they're investing in Colleen, and I think that that's a good investment because she's a very good rider, and she'll develop another one provided she gets the right support and everything. And the right owners. And she has done a great job this year. Every event, I think her and I were sort of matched against each other pretty well on our horses. And, to her credit, she went out every time and just tried harder and performed better than I did. Mine, I was really happy with mine through the spring, but she wasn't happy just being happy with it. She was really wanting that spot on the team. And I was more in the idea of I'd like my horse to go well and come through it well. And so I didn't take the risks that she did, but that's a compliment to her, not an insult. I mean, I think she should be really proud of where she is, and I'm excited to watch her go. And that horse, I don't think will be rattled by any of the environment that the Brazilians are going to bring. And again, I think it's going to be if you're there, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Are you done now?
It's all you, buddy. Disagree.
There's not a lot left to say, but the only thing it's a bit of a joke. Sorry, for my handling of technology here, but poor Catherine Robinson. If you look at her scores, yeah, she's going a bit slow in the cross country, but. All indications are that the cross country down at the Olympics is going to be more sort of closer to the 2-star than the 4-star. So, maybe the speed won't be such a big deal, but it's very, very good in the dressage and it's very good in the show jumping. So for me, could be the Canadian star that they've left off. But I think Jessie obviously deserves the spot because she's a great rider. She's produced time and time again. But they picked her on the wrong horse. I mean, of all the horses that she's got, try somebody else. I mean, that one has no chance.
Yeah. But
the Bentley's Best, I mean, that one's got a bit of a spotty cross-country rider. It's very good in the flat. It's very good in the show jumping. And if the cross-country's a little bit soft, who cares? Even if it's not, let it have a go. Yeah, and I obviously don't have all the inside information on all their horses. The Pavarotti one is, if he's sound and all that stuff, he went around the World Championships. He's good in the dressage. The show jumping's fallen off a little bit, but still that one's got to be 10 or 12 points better in the dressage than the horse that she's chosen on. And Selena, for me, she's done everything to be there, deserves to be there, and hopefully the sort of disappointing sportsmanship things that have gone on from Canada won't hurt Selena because it wasn't her fault. And then Rebecca, she's a great rider. The dressage has improved a lot in the last couple of years. But, one thing that would worry me is I saw her stop at Barbary, and that looked like it wasn't going to go, and it didn't want to do it. And so I would be a little bit concerned about that. I know it's done a lot of events and it's been very successful, but that one just looked a little bit like when you went, what happened there? I mean, it wasn't a big water, all you had to do is jump down. So I'm sure she's got that organized and figured out. And, with her past credentials and past record, she deserves to be there. But that would worry me a little bit, going to a big championships and having that happen to me. But, the thing that's too bad about, nobody wants to win because they purposely mess somebody up and use lack of sportsmanship or bad sportsmanship. And, as I say, payback's a bitch. And, I obviously wasn't in Toronto, but I heard all about it, and it's disgraceful, and it's a joke, and it's not what sports are all about. Forget eventing or riding. It's, you want to beat the guy or your competition at their best. You don't want to have, win because of something else. And so sorry for your country, but have at 'em, Brazil.
Well, and the real problem with it is, and one of the real problems with it is, I couldn't agree with you more. But it really, when you think about Canada, it is so not the way that our nation is. Our nation is geared completely the opposite. It's like, oh, that's okay. I think there's a shift going on where being more competitive is becoming more accepted. But for the longest time, it was like we're just we're happy. The participation was about basically having great sportsmanship, and this didn't have anything to do with Canadian athletes, but that's who's going to pay for it. And then long term, it's not the sort of thing. It's the sort of thing that creates rivalries in the wrong way through the next sort of 10 years, I would say. And then one other thing with Catherine Robinson is after the Pan, she did go to the Pan Ams last year, and she fell at the second fence, and she filed a complaint against a Canadian official as well after that. So it might have been a bit of a tricky situation as well in that team dynamics and let's all be friends when you still have the same people in play. And it's that's the ridiculous part of this. This is supposed to be based upon how do we get the best performance out of our athletes, and then you have things like that go on where there's no it's not very reassuring. It doesn't give anybody any confidence, and it really makes you question when you're doing this what the purpose is, and that's pretty sad. Repercussions go much further. So enough of that. On to Australia. I have to keep turning my phone on because it keeps wanting to stop on me. So why don't you start while I pull it back up?
Yeah, Australia's it's a fairly interesting team. They've got some, they got everything from a 9-year-old to an 18-year-old horse on there. Chris Burton, he won Samur in a landslide. That horse holds the record for the lowest CCI 2-star dressage score ever. It is very, very fancy in the dressage. It obviously gallops. It was one of the fastest horses at Samur. And it jumped a good round at Samur. It has had a few show jumping glitches, if you will, in some one days that it doesn't seem to have at the 3-day events, which, we all know sometimes horses are a bit better after the cross country. They're a bit more settled. But it's a beautiful horse. Chris Burton's as good a rider, probably the most underrated rider maybe in the world. I think he is fantastic to watch. Sam Griffiths with Paul Brocker won Babington in a bit of a slugfest the year that sort of everybody fell and there was a lot of rain. But it's very good in the dressage. It's been very consistent in the cross country. It had a little blip at Babington this spring, but its show jumping is fantastic. It may be just a bit outpaced in the dressage, but it's one that every team in the world would like to have because it's going to finish. It's going to finish in the mid-40s. So it might not get that individual medal of the mid-30s, but you'd love to have it on any team. And then Shane Rose to me is the Australian version of Andrew Nicholson. He's a tough guy. He's a fighter, and he's determined. And he seems to always bring the goods. He's got a great. These guys all are very good competitors. They're very laid back, but they're unbelievably competitive. And Shane's been successful with that horse, but he's been successful time and time again. And then Stuart Tinney with his beautiful gray horse that seems to just keep going on and on and on and on. Good in all three phases. And Stuart rides it great. He obviously knows it terribly well. And they. I'm with a little bit of luck, they could be right up there. Sort of stressing the Germans out a bit, but I would definitely think they would have a chance at a medal for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a great credit to Australia, their team management, and obviously at these things, that's so much what it comes down to. I think it's such a credit to their management how successful Australia has been able to stay and stay current for such a very long time. There are some really good horses and riders on that. When I look at it, it seems to me that that when you've got the badminton winners on there, and I think it's probably the weakest link of the four of them, just because I don't think it's possibly as strong a performer in this scenario. That says a lot about what your team's looking like. And I think that the Australians as a eventing nation have done an incredible job. Again, looking down the road, a little bit like the Germans, but they're not coming with it. They don't have as many resources as the Germans, and they consistently for the longest time have been performing because they do a very good job on how they start to develop their riders and then how they manage their teams. And just as a side note, because this stuff always does interest me, but I was speaking to their manager when I was in England one time, and we were at dinner together. And I didn't know him very well or anything, but we were just talking about it. And he said, they always try to choose riders two riders that live in Australia. And I said, well, that seems sort of weird. Like, why wouldn't you choose your best riders? Because a lot of them end up in Britain. And he was like, that doesn't do us any good to throw all our resources into riders who aren't giving back to our country. And it really stuck with me because I think a lot of the nations would do just the opposite. They would feel like they're given stuff given back to them because the performance is at the top level. And what he's saying, and he's not wrong, is that the resources that they're putting into these riders are going to pay back in the lessons they teach to the younger generation, and everything. And I'd never thought about it that way before, but that's the sort of thinking that makes these teams have that longevity. It's not about putting together that, 1 year or having that one lucky run. And you see nations that sort of do that, they start to spark up, and then there's no follow through with it because there's no thought beyond that one moment. And that's a big complaint I have for some teams that I watch, is it doesn't seem to actually think long term. And Australia's the epitome of it, in my opinion.
So maybe you should move back to Canada, because I'm looking at the Canadians. Maybe they're thinking the same thing. They got Jessie, Colleen, and Selena. I mean, just saying, Kyle. Sorry, maybe he actually had good enough results. You just live in the wrong place.
I have a feeling that there's more to it than results. My results would have had to have been pretty unbelievable, I think, to make that team, since they were pretty unbelievable last year and I got left off. So I'm okay with where I am. But I will say it does always occur to me that I'm teaching. I've got one very good Canadian student, but I teach a lot of American kids, and I bring them on. And I'm not saying they all make it there, but a lot of them make it up that level. And I think, I'm not really giving back to my own nation the way that he talked about. And that is, that stuff does, I think about that stuff. I mean, maybe it's a little stupid to think that way because it's not business and it's not money, but it is, my nation is in my heart, and that it kind of makes it up. All that upsets me,
Give me a break. You make me sick. You're so full of it.
Yeah, I know.
The Americans.
But I'm willing to become American if I get all of your owners.
If there's any really, really rich Canadians out there, you call Kyle. Otherwise, forget it.
Yes, well, there is that. I do have to pay. I do have to pay a mortgage too, so I'm all right with making money. All right, enough of that nonsense. Where was the rest of the Australians? Was that we covered them all? Oh, there was one other interesting thing, and that was that there was a protest for the Australians as well. The difference is I think everybody in the media had all the information on the Canadian protest and the appeal when it wasn't supposed to be out there. I think the team was known. I knew within 2 hours of it being announced, and I'd asked not to have the information given to me by the team because I felt like if it got leaked, they would assume that it was me that was leaking it because I'm fairly vocal. I know you're going to find that surprising. But the Australians managed to keep theirs completely under wraps until the appeal was done. And Paul Tapner appealed him being left off. And he was on Prince Mayo, who was a horse that was owned by some Canadians for a rider named Jordan McDonald. And Jordan was a great guy. He was here for a little bit, and I helped him a couple of times. I mean, he wasn't a student or anything like that, but he was just like him and his wife were just fantastic people. His wife worked for me for a little bit. Unfortunately, we lost him a couple of years ago, and it was a really big shakeup for Canada. And there's a satisfaction watching a horse go on and get to that level and get named. Yes, named for another country, which is a little disappointing for Canada, but to have it named for a nation for the Olympics, it's really kind of cool because I know he thought a lot of the horse in developing it and everything, and he was responsible for picking it up in Ireland at the sale there, and I think the girl that was producing it, didn't you?
Yeah, the Prince Mayo and my Copper Beach were both started by Gemma Tattersall, who's going as well as anybody in the world right now, and is on the British team for the Olympics this year. But just a little sort of tidbit, I've seen Prince Mayo. He's a beautiful horse, and don't know much about the appeals process, but the Australian team is certainly a difficult team to get into, and a lot of people's inventory. But Paul's certainly had a good run with that horse, and will continue to keep going forward.
Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be all the teams we covered today. We will be reconvening and doing some more broadcasts on the event in Montana, Rebecca Farm. Fantastic event. We're going to be doing a show about that. We're going to cover the fantasy equestrian site, which is going to be, I think, debuting on Wednesday, which you should check out so you can put your teams together for. They've got a 4-star series, they've got a 3-star series, and they have they're going to do something for the Olympics. It's kind of neat, even if you're a show jumping or dressage enthusiast. They're going to have I'm just read what they're going to do is going to have they're going to combine teams across the board. So you should look into that because I think that's going to be kind of neat to watch. And we'll do a show where we talk about the particulars of it because I think we started a little bit without knowing about that with our selecting teams earlier this year, which Buck lost a bunch of them to me. And we need to get back to doing that because I think you haven't wore that bloody pink hat. I should be sending it out to you in Montana. All right? So thank you for listening or watching.
Man.